In your opinion, what is the relationship today between science and literature? I recently read an article by Roland Barthes called Literature versus Science. Barthes tends to think of literature as the awareness that language has of being language, of having a density of its own, and its own independent existence. For literature, language is never transparent, and is never merely an instrument to convey a meaning or a fact or a thought or a truth. That is, it cannot mean anything but itself. Whereas on the other hand, the idea of language given by science is that of a neutral utensil that is used to say something else, to mean something foreign to it. This different concept of language is what distinguishes science from literature. Proceeding along these lines, Barthes gets to the point of maintaining that literature is more scientific than science, because literature knows that language is never naive, and knows that in writing one cannot say anything extraneous to writing, or express any truth that is not a truth having to do with the art of writing. The science of language, according to Barthes, if it wishes to remain a science, is destined to be transformed into literature, total writing, and will also lay claim to the pleasures of language, which are at present the exclusive prerogative of literature. But can the science of today really be defined by such trust in an absolute code of references, or is it not in itself by this time a continual questioning of its own linguistic conventions? In his polemic against science, Barthes appears to envisage a kind of science far more compact and sure of itself than it really is, and as far as mathematics is concerned, rather than claiming to base an argument on a truth beyond itself, we find a science not guiltless of tinkering with its own formulative process. The above-mentioned article by Barthes is included in an issue of the Times Literary Supplement from a few months ago that was devoted to continental European literature, and in particular to the relations between literature and other fields of research. In the same issue, another French writer, Raymond Queneau, older than Barthes and belonging to quite another cultural background, talks about science in a very different way. Queneau is a writer whose hobby is mathematics, and he has more friends among mathematicians than among men of letters. In his article, he stresses the place that mathematical thought, through the increasing mathematization of the human sciences, is now acquiring in humanistic culture, and therefore in literature as well. Along with a mathematician friend of his, Queneau founded the Ouvroir de Littérature Potentielle, OLIPO for short, a group of 10 people who carry out mathematico-literary research. Here we are in a totally different climate from the austere and rarefied atmosphere of the analyses of Barthes and of the writings of the tel quel group of authors. The dominant feature here is play, and the acrobatics of the intellect and the imagination. It is no coincidence that OLIPO is an offshoot of the Collège de Pataphysique, that academy of mockery and practical joking founded in memory of Alfred Jarry. It is the semi-clandestine magazine of the Collège de Pataphysique, Sub Sitia Pataphysica, that publishes the work of OLIPO, as for example a study of the mathematical problems posed by the series of rhymes in the metrical form of the sestina in the work of the Provençal poets, and in Dante, a series that can be represented as a spiral. I think that the two positions I have described define the situation pretty well. They are the two poles between which we find ourselves oscillating, or at least I find myself oscillating, feeling the attraction and being aware of the limitations of each of them. On the one side is Barthes with his followers, enemies of science, who think and talk with scientific precision, and the other is Queneau with his friends of science, who think and talk in terms of caprice and somersaults of language and thought.